Hello humans, it's just Martine, and today we're going to be reading 5 Christmas stories from Project Gutenberg. If you're unfamiliar with this series on my channel, I'm going to leave the playlist right there. Basically, I go to Project Gutenberg, the main source of public domain books, at least in the United States, and I pick a particular category. Last time I did juvenile fiction, and I pick 5 stories/books to read from the collection. The last time I did this, it took me 2 months to read everything. Luckily, looking at this list of Christmas stories, a lot of them are either short stories or what appear to be novellas because they're only right above 100 pages. So that's super great. Right now, I'm going to walk you through the 5 different stories that I chose to read for this project. For this round of Adventures in Public Domain, I'm going to be reading A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens, The Life and Adventures of Santa Claus by L. Frank Baum, Is There a Santa Claus by Jacob A. Riss, The Abbot's Ghost or Maurice Traherne's Temptation by Louisa May Alcott, and The Story of the Other Wise Man by Henry Van Dyke. Okay, so the first book that I'm going to read for this Christmas Project Gutenberg challenge is The Life and Adventures of Santa Claus because it is the longest on the list. So I want to knock it out first. Last time I did a Project Gutenberg challenge, I started with the smallest book, but I feel like reversing that now. Mainly because I want an excuse not to read the whole thing tonight. So I'm going to start that. I don't know anything about it. A Christmas Carol is the only one of these books or stories that I know anything about. We're kind of going in blind, which is different than reading Anne of Green Gables or The Wizard of Oz like I did in my last episode of this. So I'm interested to see what goes on. Okay, so I'm 10% of the way into The Life and Adventures of Santa Claus by Frank L. Baum, and may I just say, it is super cute so far. I'm very interested to see how it continues to unravel. So basically, so far in this first 10%, they've described the forest. Basically, we're following this one nymph at first, and she finds out that there's a child who's been abandoned on the edge of the forest, and even though it's against the law of the forest, which I thought it was interesting that it was called the law of the forest because that reminded me of the law of the jungle in the Jungle Book, but even though it's against the law of the forest, she goes and she rescues the child, and she asks the master woodsman Ak if she can keep him. He agrees, and so she names the child Claus, and then the queen says that she should name him Ne Claus to signify that he is hers because her name starts with that, but she usually calls him Claus, and so in this story, that's the Nicholas is where the Nicholas, part of St. Nicholas, comes from, which is super cool. My family celebrates St. Nicholas Day, but it's just interesting because in America, most children just know him as Santa Claus. I think this origin of how the story goes, the way Frank L. Baum tells it, watching the little pieces already come together is just so cool. So I'm excited to see what happens next as the boy starts to grow. Good read so far. So I'm 36% of the way through The Life and Adventures of Santa Claus currently, and I'm still really, really liking it. I think it's super cute and very creative, and also I'm just excited because Claus made his first few toys and he started giving them to kids, and it's so cute. Thinking about how his journey, all he wants to do is to be able to make kids happy because somebody took care of him when he was a kid and he didn't have anyone. It's precious. It's so precious. I hope all of the Christmas stories are this good because I'm loving this so far. I wonder, since it's by Frank L. Baum, is it juvenile fiction? And if so, did anyone have parents read this to them around Christmas time when they were growing up? I think that would be so cute and fun. Yes. I'm a little over halfway through The Life and Adventures of Santa Claus, and the Aguas were just introduced to the story in the last chapter, and I feel a little weird about them. I feel like there's something wrong about their portrayal. I don't know specifically what. I looked up an article about it, and it suggested that it was related to Frank L. Baum's editorial he wrote a couple months before he started working on this book or something that was about Christmas, and he mentioned Native Americans in there too and had some not great views. I don't really know. I just know that as soon as I started reading the chapter about them, I was something in here feels like it didn't age well, but it's kind of hard to put my finger on. So just a warning about that. If you're interested in this book, I wouldn't say it's explicit in what it says about other people, how it relates to the real world, because it is a fantastical story, but I'd just be wary of that. But that's to be said of all older books, but like it hadn't happened yet in this book, so like this is me telling you now that it has happened. Not as much as it could, thank goodness. Let's keep on that path, but something. So just keep that in mind. Other than that, I'm still really enjoying it, so that's good. I just finished The Life and Adventures of Santa Claus, and I think I'm going to give it like 4 to 4.5 stars. It was really, really good. I just had that one like weird issue in the middle that I discussed, but like it went over everything from how he like was named Claus and then Santa Claus later on to like how he got his reindeer and his sleigh and how he started going to all the children and how he got his elves to help him and all that cute stuff, and how like people would start with Christmas trees and stuff, and it was just super cute. I really enjoyed it, and I think children would love this book. I mean, it was written for children, but like children, why do more people not read this book to their children? Did your parents ever read you this book? So cute. Yes. Frank L. Baum continues to write good books. I don't know anything about him, so I don't know if I can endorse him, but his books are at least really cute. On to the next one. I was planning to start reading A Christmas Carol either tonight or tomorrow, and then I was reading Drums of Autumn and they started talking about A Christmas Carol. We love when that happens. It's a sign. So I'm 20% of the way through Christmas Carol and I have some thoughts. One, this is my first time reading the original story. And this is the most famous of my selections for this particular secret TBR, if you will. And I think it's so interesting to read because you get to see how all the different adaptations that you've seen or read in your life have each reflected the story differently. It's also funny because I tried to read the original story when I was younger, maybe in middle school, and I couldn't because it scared me too much, and I'm reading it right now and so far it's not scary. Probably just because I've grown up, I don't know, or I've gotten used to the story of A Christmas Carol. It used to scare me quite a bit. And then for several consecutive years, I participated in a play/musical version of it in my hometown. And so I have that particular script because that same script has been used for like, I don't even know how many years now, at least 5. And I have that one memorized, and it was adapted by the director from the original story. So it's interesting to read like the direct lines and then the lines that she kind of changed, but I see where she went. And that's just really interesting to me. It's also really cool that I'm reading this year because this is the first year since this local tradition started in my hometown that we can't have the show because of COVID-19. So that's kind of sad, but at least I'm reading it now. I haven't been participating for the past few years, although I did have to like step in really last minute during an emergency situation like a couple years ago, but I still went to see it every year. So even though I have it like memorized, it still warms my heart, and it definitely reminds me of Christmas time. I think sometimes, especially living in Florida, it's hard for things to feel like Christmas, but I think this story definitely does, and it also brings me back to my childhood. Like my brother's favorite Christmas movie, I think, was The Muppets: A Christmas Carol. Great adaptation, oddly enough. I also like the Disney one with Scrooge McDuck. That one warms my heart. So just lots of good versions out there. And then Disney has the animated version. That one was pretty creepy, not gonna lie, especially for an animated movie. There are just so many adaptations that have been part of my childhood that it's nice to read this. And again, so crazy that I was reading Outlander and they mentioned it. And not even just like mentioned it in passing, like spent 3 whole pages talking about it right before I was ready. Like I was planning to start reading it tonight. Wild. So I'm 20% of the way through and it's pretty good. You know, that's all I really have to say right now. Okay, I got up to 50% of A Christmas Carol last night, but I was sitting in the dark reading, and so I wasn't gonna update you from the dark. And I wasn't gonna turn on the lights. So I took some notes of what I wanted to say, and I have them right here, so we're gonna go through them. First of all, I just think it's super interesting that literally every adaptation ever has a different interpretation of Scrooge's family from his childhood. Like, Fan is usually there, but even Fan is a little different, like when she gets sick, when she dies, how specifically she's related to the other characters in the story. So like, she's always Scrooge's sister, right? But like, in some versions, Scrooge has another sister, and like, that sister is the mother of his nephew Fred. But like in the original book, Fan is the mother of Fred. There's no second sister, it's just Fan, and Fan doesn't die until she's a little more grown up. Whereas like in some versions, Fan dies as a little girl, and that messes with Ebenezer like really, really badly, and it affects his relationship. So that's another thing. His relationship with Belle, who doesn't even get a name, I'm pretty sure, is only mentioned very briefly. They don't seem to meet at the Fezziwig night, as is often portrayed, like the Christmas celebration at the Fezziwig's warehouse. Like, she doesn't mention Finn at all dying. That's not a sore spot for him yet, so I don't know if like Fann's not dead or something. His relationship with his father is always up in the air. Like, was his father a bad man, or did he just not like Scrooge? Was he gone? What have you? Like, in some versions, Scrooge's parents are deceased, I think, or maybe too busy. But in this version, his father kind of seemed abusive. It was also interesting to see Fezziwig in like particular boss mode as he was telling them like how to clear the things away, and he was just being a boss to Scrooge. And you see him being a boss to Scrooge and you wonder, how did Scrooge ever stray from being a different boss than that? And Scrooge, even himself, one of the things I really liked is that during each of these memories he says something that he wishes he could change. He's not just taking it in and feeling the emotions. He's saying like, oh, I wish like I had given some money to that little boy who was caroling because he was like so full of happiness, or I wish that I could talk to Bob Cratchit right now and be the boss to him that like Fezziwig was to me. So I thought that was really interesting. Belle also had this really beautiful quote. Again, she's not named, but whatever. And she said, "You fear the world too much." And I really, really liked that as like a reminder not to let fear guide your actions and the things that you do, because Scrooge wanted money not so he could have things or support his family, but because he was afraid of not having money. And that drove him down like the miserly path he went. I also really liked when Belle said, "I release you for the love of him you once were." I thought that was so pretty and tragic. Like, she used to love him, but she still does love this one person, but it's not the person that he is anymore. It killed me. And then he also didn't witness the memory of Fan dying, which he does in some versions. And again, I think like in most versions, Fan's death affects him very much, but like it didn't seem to really play a role in this. So the past was like not as impactful as I thought it was in many other adaptations. So like, kudos to the adaptations, but it was also weird reading the original being like, wait, what's happening? Where is everything that's ever made this super angsty? Like, there's still some angst, obviously, but like not nearly as much. I guess we'll see what the other two ghosts have to bring. I just finished reading A Christmas Carol and I ended up giving it 3.75 out of 5 stars. It was good, but not as good as The Life and Adventures of Santa Claus. And yeah, I don't know, just, I think it's really interesting to be writing with not particularly children in mind when it comes to Christmas, because it's not a bad thing for adults to read Christmas stories, right? But like, I think it's interesting for your main written audience to kind of be more adult, because like this did not have the voice of like telling a children's story, in my opinion. So even if it was meant that way, like that didn't translate. So it was just interesting, and I understand why, especially because it was about changing the heart of like an older gentleman. Still an interesting choice. I don't know, sue me. I feel like some of the adaptations do like a better job of capturing it. I don't know if that's just because I was reading quickly or because I've seen the adaptations too many times in my life or what, but I did think it was interesting that Scrooge, like, he's always been confused by like what people are doing during the Ghost of Christmas Yet to Come. He's like, who died, whatever, but he recognizes people and he exclaims like, that's my housekeeper and stuff. In other adaptations of it, when say like Mrs. Dilber goes to sell things to like the pawnbroker or whatever he is, like this time he's just like, what's going on? What's going on? And he had the chance to like see who the dead man was and he couldn't do it. And he didn't even want to check the gravestone, but the ghost was like, you're gonna check. So that was interesting, but it was a pretty good read overall. Onwards and upwards. I just spent a couple minutes reading Is There a Santa Claus? And it took a while to like get where it was going. I'm not sure that I liked the writing style, but the message was still very good. So I think I'm going to give it 3.5 stars. It's really hard to rate. It's what's basically a news article, but I'm going to do it anyway because I want it to count towards my Goodreads reading. It's fun. I think if you're looking for something to cheer you up, especially like this year has been so hard, and if you need to be reminded about like the spirit of Christmas and such, I think this would be a really good, just quick read for you. I know the Dear Virginia letter is a lot more famous, so I'm not sure if I would recommend like this one over that one, but this one is like a little longer than the Dear Virginia. Yes, there is a Santa Claus letter, also more geared towards grown-ups, because the letter that it's originally based off of is from a boy whose father told him that there is no Santa Claus. Yeah, it was interesting. I think it's always interesting to read people's different takes on the spirit of Christmas and such, and so I enjoyed it, but like it wasn't mind-blowing, especially since there is like a more famous letter to the editor response about Santa Claus. So, but I'm still glad I read it for this challenge. Okay, so I just read the first chapter of The Abbot's Ghost by Louisa May Alcott, and I have no idea what makes this a Christmas story in particular. And I even like went through the trouble, I was like, that doesn't really seem like it would be a Christmas story, so I looked it up and it everywhere I looked said it was. Who's to say? I don't know if it's because Louisa May Alcott's writing is like often viewed as a Christmas story, even if it's not really like Little Women is. I have no idea. But I'm interested to see. So far, it's already kind of wild. I mean, we're one chapter in and there are already people who like hate each other and who like pretended to hate each other, and people with different like interests in mind, and things are just kind of getting crazy, which is interesting. So even if it's not really a Christmas story, maybe it will just be really good. I'll update you, and then you can know whether or not you should ever read this book at Christmas time or whether you should just read it randomly. But so far, it's good. It's weird. It's kind of crazy, but it's good. The book is set around Christmas time, so I would classify it as a Christmas read because that's really all you need to make it a Christmassy read. I do remember now that when I was picking my books and I looked at this, it said that it was set at Christmas time, but like was more a story about these people. I actually really appreciated that because, you know, most of the stories I've been reading have been like very directly about Christmas, and I like having the atmosphere of like Christmas time and the holidays, but like make it kind of creepy. They were telling ghost stories, they were betraying each other. It was kind of hard to follow at points, I won't lie. Like it skipped around perspectives quite a bit. Like it would be talking about this person I would follow, and like half a second later they'd be talking about someone else, and I missed that transition and I had to like go and read it a couple paragraphs over again. But overall, it was like pretty enjoyable and like not your typical Christmas book, which I think makes it fun. I think I'm going to give it like 3.5 stars. No, 3. I think I'm going to give it 3 stars. 3 stars is not a bad rating. It's also not a good rating. It's just like a middle of the road. It's 3 of 5. That's The Abbot's Ghost. Checked off the list. As I was going to put this into Goodreads, I just learned that Louisa May Alcott had a pen name, A.M. Barnard, that she wrote thrillers under, which this was one of. Random! But cool, I guess. Right, so I read pretty much the entirety of The Other Wise Men by Henry Van Dyke last night. It's a short story, so it wasn't long by any means, but I finished it, and so here are my thoughts. I gave it 4 stars. Now, there was a period, like a third of the way in, where I was like, that was going to be my review. However, then I started seeing how the threads of the short story were coming together and like where it was leading, and I just really liked the message of it. So if you are at all interested maybe in checking this out, here's what you need to know. The Other Wise Men is about a 4th magi who was supposed to meet up with the 3 wise men to visit the baby Jesus, and then he got sidetracked. That's basically the whole story about him getting sidetracked. But what I did not know was that it was a story that would continue for like 33 years throughout the whole life of Jesus, and that it would reference Easter as well. So it was kind of an emotional read in some ways. It was really good. So if you actually care about the religious aspects of celebrating Christmas, this was a very cute and happy book. It made my heart warm. If you want to avoid religious Christmas stories pretty much entirely, then I would avoid this one. Those are my recommendations. I think there are plenty of other Christmas books that are not really religious that you can enjoy if you don't want to infuse religion into Christmas and just want it to be a secular thing. Is it non-secular? If you don't want to have to do with Jesus, that's fine. That's on you. Celebrate it how you want. I enjoyed the story. There's that. That was the 5th book from Public Domain that was a Christmas story that I was going to read for this video, which means we are officially at the end of the video. Let me wrap up my thoughts. So for The Life and Adventures of Santa Claus, I gave it 4 stars. A Christmas Carol got 3 stars. Ish. It was like a 3.5. Is There a Santa Claus? Got a 3 stars. The Abbot's Ghost got 3 stars. And then The Story of the Other Wise Men got 4 stars. So specific recommendations if you want a really Christmas related story, not necessarily religious, I would give you The Life and Adventures of Santa Claus, Is There a Santa Claus, and A Christmas Carol. If you really want to focus on the religious aspect, I would recommend The Other Wise Man. And if you want a story set around Christmas time that is not really Christmassy, but you want the atmosphere of Christmas but make it a little ghosty, then I would recommend The Abbot's Ghost. There you go. I read these books so you don't have to if you want to be able to figure out about it. So I have lots of ideas for this series in the future, but if you have a specific one that you want me to make, please comment it down below so that I'll prioritize it. I already have one That was a comment on the last video that is my next one, so Nicoletta, look out for that, hopefully coming sooner rather than later. If you enjoyed this video, go ahead and give it a big thumbs up and comment down below. Have you read any of these books or short stories? If so, what did you think of them? Did this intrigue you to pick up any of the other ones? What are some of your favorite Christmas reads, public domain or not? And subscribe for more reading, writing, and college lifestyle content. Until next time, bye humans, bye!